turbot, served at the dinner with wasabi mashed potatoes and vegetables, is also commonly fished in the UK coastal waters at the heart of the dispute over future access for European vessels. EU officials yesterday declined to disclose where the ingredients for the dinner were sourced from. However, most turbot is caught in the English Channel and North Sea, with Spain catching around 3/4 of the fish, according to British Sea Fishing. For dessert, the leaders and their teams were served pavlova with exotic fruit and coconut sorbet. Talking about the menu, Sky News' John Craig said, "On the dessert menu is pavlova, which Australians say comes from there. And the PM has been talking about leaving on Australian trade terms, no deal." What's next for food science and technology? Find out at Deep Tech Summit. So somebody on the commission, whether the president or one of her staff, is either being a bit provocative with the menu or has a sense of humor. I suspect a sense of humor. Mr. Johnson and Ms. von der Leyen were joined by their chief negotiators Lord Frost and Michel Barnier, plus a handful of other officials on each side. "We will use your email address only for sending you newsletters. Please see our privacy notice for details of your data protection rights." The dinner was held in the European Commission's HQ in the Belgian capital, which is currently under a strict lockdown following a coronavirus surge across the country. It comes as Mr. Johnson is standing firm against EU attempts to punish Britain for leaving the bloc as Brexit talks teeter on the brink of collapse. He insisted no prime minister could accept demands made by Brussels for continued meddling in the affairs of a sovereign nation. His defiant pledge came ahead of a crunch showdown with the EU's top bureaucrat tonight to try to save the deadlocked trade talks. Mr. Johnson set out his final demands for a UK-EU free trade deal to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen at the dinner. "A good deal is still there to be done," he tweeted on his departure to the meeting. "But whether we agree trading arrangements resembling those of Australia or Canada, the United Kingdom will prosper mightily as an independent nation." A snap on Twitter showed the Prime Minister boarding and refused by senior royals and ministers for diplomatic visits for the flight to Brussels. Shortly before his dash to the Belgian capital, the Prime Minister vowed not to cave in to EU demands for the right to impose punitive tariffs on the UK at will for any alleged breach of the bloc's regulations. "I do not believe that those are terms that any Prime Minister of this country should accept," Mr. Johnson told MPs yesterday. "I must tell the House that, whether our new trading arrangements resemble those of Australia's with the EU or whether they are like those of Canada with the EU, I have absolutely no doubt that, from January 1, this country is going to prosper mightily." Rejecting the EU terms for a deal, Mr. Johnson told the Commons during Prime Minister's questions, "I must tell the House that our friends in the EU are currently insisting that, if they pass a new law in the future with which we in this country do not comply or do not follow suit, they should have the automatic right to punish us and to retaliate. Secondly, they are saying that the UK should be the only country in the world not to have sovereign control over its fishing waters." Mr. Johnson's meeting with the Commission chief last night was held to decide whether to allow a fresh rounds of last-ditch negotiations to try to clinch a deal before the UK leaves the bloc's single market and customs union at the end of the year. Downing Street aides said a UK-EU trade deal was still achievable if the EU was willing to drop unacceptable demands on fishing quotas, regulations and state aid rules. Mr. Johnson's press secretary, Allegra Stratton said, he believes there is a good deal still to be done. Ms. Stratton rejected suggestions from the EU that talks could continue beyond the end of the Brexit transition period on December 31 to try to agree a deal. "The Prime Minister has been as clear as he can, there will be no negotiations going into 2021. She said Mr. Johnson would tell Ms. von der Leyen that he can't accept anything that undermines our ability to control our laws or control our waters. EU sources said the Prime Minister was invited to Brussels after deep disagreements flared between the two leaders in a phone call on Monday. Officials were yesterday preparing emergency procedures for capitals to sign off on any agreement after leaders were told a draft legal text would not be ready in time for the gathering. Hardline EU states have demanded time to read the Brexit trade deal before they can rubber stamp the pact, a senior official said. The bloc is now expected to ratify the agreement by email if a deal is reached between UK and EU negotiators before the end of the year. Some EU leaders are pressing for Brussels to ramp up preparations for a no-deal Brexit amid growing fears Mr. Johnson will not agree to their demands for the so-called level playing field. The EU official said, some members have been asking for contingency measures because some are more exposed because of their trading relationship with Britain and time is pressing. Angela Merkel was yesterday ready for the Prime Minister to propose conditions we cannot accept and warned colleagues to brace for a no-deal outcome. The German Chancellor said the EU would continue to demand the ability to retaliate with trade tariffs if Britain moves away from the bloc's rule book. She said, "We need to have a level playing field not only for today, but for tomorrow, and the day after that. Otherwise the result will be unfair terms of competition, which we cannot impose upon our businesses." She added, "There is still a chance there will be a deal." French officials were last night pessimistic about the chances of a deal. One said, "We can't exclude von der Leyen and Johnson seeking to negotiate, but positions are so far away that an agreement is unlikely during the night. More than likely the mandate will be given back to negotiators to continue negotiations, but the likelihood of no deal is growing." Ahead of last night's dinner, Irish Premier Michael Martin said the trade talks between the EU and UK were on the precipice of collapse. He told the Irish Parliament, "At the moment we are on the precipice of a no deal. It remains to be seen how the principals, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and President of Commission Ursula von der Leyen, can rescue the situation in their talks this evening." Brussels sources said it would take a Christmas miracle to clinch a Brexit trade deal by the end of the week because of the substantial list of outstanding issues. One insider said Mrs. von der Leyen should use all of the charm available to woo the British Prime Minister into changing his position. The source added, "I'd light a candle for that." They expect chief negotiators Lord Frost and Mr. Barnier to take their wrangling over the future relationship pact right up to Christmas Day. One senior EU diplomat last night, said, "Miracles usually happen later this month. It's clear we've made some substantial movement over the past couple of months, so let's hope the British Prime Minister brings some energized movement on the British position." They added, "Even if it brings something positive, there's so much work still to be done. So the only thing Ursula von der Leyen can tell the leaders tomorrow is that Michel Barnier will continue work, but that certainly will require some further time."